item of business that we have today is agenda approval.
Move approval.
So all those in favor say aye on the agenda approval.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. Talk on items not on the agenda.
Hi, Honorable President Denton and members of the board. I'm representing Yokoyama Farms and also Victoria Yokoyama today. I am requesting consideration of levy improvement measure that will preserve our house and land at 3000 South River Road, West Sacramento, California, 95691. We have farmed in West Sacramento since the 1940s and continue to do so. Our house and our land are our parents' legacy for all generations of our family. We have studied technical data and reports issued over the past few years that concern the Southport EIP. We have concluded that the West Sacramento Levee Improvement Program can develop levee plans that would reduce the economic impact on our farm. Plans for Lake Washington Boulevard along our northern border and Village Parkway through the middle of our land will minimize farm operations, remove vast amounts of usable acreage, and isolate the western section. Without consideration of a levee design that would reduce the horizontal footprint, the eastern section would also be lost. We have retained Mr. Mark Gilbert, ENGO, to assist us with solutions that will preserve our home and river frontage, and appreciate the assistance from Mr. Kendrick Jamison, City of West Sacramento. The West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency letter dated September 6, 2012 states that a hybrid combination of measures that would cause less landowner impact would be evaluated. We hope that the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency will adopt such measures for the Yokoyama farm. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment on matters not on the agenda? Not, we will move to the approval of the October the 11th, 2012 minutes.
Approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Review of monthly year-to-date revenue and expenses.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This cash flow report summarizes receipts and expenditures for the month of September 2012. There was no revenue for the month of September. There's an entry for $173,000, but that is actually a refunded deposit associated with the Williams acquisition. It occurred over 2 fiscal years, so it had to be booked as a revenue. Expenditures for the month totaled $1.2 million, the majority of the activity being in the acquisition of the Williams property for the Rivers project at $353,000, and ongoing design work for the Southport project at $754,000. The fund balance as of September 30th, 12 is shown as $10.3 million. There's 2 accounting entries that haven't been put on the books yet, and they're for 2 debt service payments for $432,000 for the 2008 bond and $421,000 for the 2011 bond. When those get entered, the report will be revised and the balance will go down to $9.5 million. DWR is finalizing another true-up payment, and that should add another $2.5 million to WSAFCA's revenue. And additionally, they started work on reconciling the outstanding credits from the period before the funding agreements, 2007 to 2009. I don't know what that will result in, but it'll result in another sizable cash contribution to WSAFCA. I'll have more information on that as they start the work on the reconciliation. To date, we've received $8.6 million through the design funding agreement and $16.4 million through the construction funding agreement. And other things, staff changed the format of the report a little bit, and we're we're considering, rather than showing just a quarter and monthly report, that will show each month, so the report will grow in size, so to speak, from 11.5 by 8.5 by 11 size report to 11 by 17 report, so you can see each month, month to month, and see any changes on prior months. And we thought it might give you better information. So unless we hear otherwise, we'll go ahead and give you every month, so you can see the changes that happen to arrears, accounting entries, and things like that, so you have better information. Also, the board received a memo summarizing the state's true-up process, and the memo's broad points were that the true-up process is quarterly, so there is a delay in receiving state reimbursement for expenses. And whether or not WSAFCA is actually due a payment depends on the actual invoice data, whether we overspent or underspent against projections, and what the next quarterly projection will look like. Those two items will determine whether or not we get cash. And lastly, that WSAFCA has current resources to spend and carry those costs in the interim. So even though there's a delay, we have adequate cash resources to pay bills, et cetera. And that ends the report for this month. I'll take any questions.
Well, I guess I'll ask a question on the cash flow. You talked about a capacity for an additional $12 million in additional bonds at some
Yes.
point. Is that anticipated before construction?
I reckon it would be. Yeah, that's the next hurdle will be the Southport construction. So any outstanding capacity, bonding capacity that WSAFCA has at this time would be probably
Will be
applied to
used.
that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
West Sacramento Area Flood Control Association project updates.
Thank you very much, Chairman Denton. Excuse me. The members of the board have the biweekly progress report in the agenda packet, and so what I'd like to do is just touch on a few highlights. Everything's great, and everything's a highlight, but what we'll do, rather than in the interest of time, is just to touch on a few items that are illustrative of the progress being made by the team. Speaking a little bit about the 2011 early implementation projects at both the Rivers site and the CHP Academy site, piezometers are in the process of being installed in the levee and adjacent to the levee structures as required by the operations conditions. That work will be executed very quickly. It's not very invasive, and it happens fast. Other thing of note for the River site is a 2-year process for acquisition has completed with the conveyance of the Williams property, which is the bulk of the land at the Rivers EIP site, has been recorded. And over the coming months, the WSAFCA will be going through the process of reconveying different bundles of rights to entities for long-term operation of the flood control facility, recreational access for the city of West Sacramento, and long-term O&M of the environmental mitigation work that's currently under construction. Speaking of the environmental mitigation work, construction's moving apace. We have a lease with the Department of Water Resources for a water connection at the DWR Maintenance Area 4 yard, which is great. They'll provide irrigation supply for the next 5 to 10 years while that planting is becoming established. And then after that period, because of the types of vegetation and access to fairly high groundwater, we won't need to provide any further irrigation over time. Moving on to the Southport Early Implementation Project, here identified as 2014 EIP. The second administrative draft environmental impact study is presently under review by our colleagues at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Sacramento District. That review is complicated and is also involving other resource agencies at this stage. We wanted to engage DWR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and Central Valley Flood Protection Board, Department of Fish and Game, as early as possible to acquaint them with the project. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's complex in terms of its sophistication and its implementation. And what we've learned by way of lessons in previous projects is that the earlier we're able to engage with substantive information to these agencies, the smoother our ongoing relationships with them are. So that's happening at this time. In the real estate services area, Bender Rosenthal, this is a company that the board recently approved a services contract, is putting together the real estate project management and communications plan. It'll be a while until Bender Rosenthal actually hits the ground with a lot of activities with property owners, but in the meantime, they've got a couple months to put their program together. SCS Engineers is continuing to work through their program of characterizing potential environmental site assessment issues. This is typically related to hazardous materials. The company has collected 403 of the 736 soil samples in their extensive program for soil characterization. We continue to receive access rights to different properties. The most recent has been on the Seacon site up in Newport Estates, and then there are a number of other property owners who we have ongoing outreach to gather rights of entry. And this is a work that will probably require another month or two to complete. In addition to environmental site assessment surveying, there's also land surveying that Mark Thomas and Company is providing in support of the real estate work. And it presently is about 75% complete. That work is using other survey data that has been already compiled by Morrow in support of the project design program, so we're using resources as efficiently as possible. Quick update on the design program. The team is moving quickly to achieve the 65% complete deliverable in early January. We were able to gather remaining input for that design deliverable by the end of October, and very importantly, that additional information included a set of meetings with property owners in segments C and B to come to an understanding and hopefully as beneficial an arrangement as possible for the alignment of Village Parkway and private driveways that will provide access to the properties once South River Road has been eliminated from the levee. Again, a very fruitful set of interactions, and we were able to get direction from the property owners on the basis of consensus in those meetings for their preferences, which will be included in the 65% design. It's likely that there will be a need for a few more refinements between 65 and 90% design. So as soon as we have that material, we'll be scheduling meetings with the property owners to get their reactions and input on any final adjustments necessary to provide adequate access to their properties. One issue that the property owners have asked the program to consider is the possibility of connecting the interim Village Parkway roadway all the way through to Gregory Avenue. It's not clear to the program and to our state sponsors that that connection has a nexus to the flood protection purpose of this project. However, it makes all the sense in the world from a transportation standpoint for Village Parkway to be a through street. Yes, sir.
Does it not replace a current facility, meaning South River Road?
The South River Road, the purpose of South River Road through the lens of the Flood Protection Agency is to provide access to those properties. And the configuration that we presently are pursuing that doesn't have a direct connection all the way through from Village Parkway does that job. The state is going to share in the costs of this project on the basis of the least cost solution. So what we'll do is we'll go through an exercise evaluating least cost solution, including the cost of a fully connected Village Parkway all the way through to Gregory Avenue. We'll give it a run, but I want to make clear that we don't have any assurance at this point that it'll happen, but we'll do the homework, we'll do the diligence, and we'll make the proposal to DWR. At this point, the ballpark for that connection from the end of the Village Parkway, as it's presently being designed in 65%, to Gregory Avenue, that remaining gap is about a $1 million project. At this point, the city does not have the resources in the road improvement fund to cover that component. Again, it's not a matter of debate of the merits from a transportation standpoint. It's a question of, can we bring adequate funding to the project to close that gap? So we will do the diligence and we will conduct the analysis to see if we can get DWR to come along with us. Any other questions about the Southport EIP? I've covered a lot of material very quickly. I just want to make sure that if the board has any questions before I move on to another project that we covered them at this point.
The only question that I have, and it really pertains to the 2011 EIP Rivers. I see where Secretary of Army Darcy has denied our request for waiver. If and when the GRR is completed, does that take them out of the process and we do get the upfront monies and things that we have put in?
Great question, Mr. Christoph. One of the challenges that we face is the Army Corps of Engineers' reaction to projects that have already been constructed, which is different than their reaction to projects that have yet to be constructed. So the timing of the GRR is of crucial importance for us to get to a point where we are able to get authorization for credit or eligibility for credit under Section 221 for this Southport project. So we need the GRR in place, or at least establish a particular milestone, the public draft milestone of the GRR in place before we go into construction on Southport, in order to, again, follow all the rules as we now understand them to have eligibility for 221 credit. The 2011 EIPs are constructed, and the latest communication from ASA Darcy was that she could not waive the requirements of 221, which required that eligibility be determined prior to construction. That's their interpretation of the law, and we will continue to encourage the ASA to take a different approach in interpreting the law. And we're also taking a look at proposing legislation in Congress that will adjust those aspects of the law that apparently are in our way for gaining 221 crediting for the 2011 projects.
Well, that really doesn't make a lot of sense to, I mean, if they want to wait until the GRR is done, I don't agree with it, but at the same time I could live with it. But it seems like, from a historical perspective, any monies that we have put in, and then there is a formula that the feds use and the Corps uses to reimburse those upfront monies. So now if the GRR gets done, it makes sense that, and it is, and the GRR says, well, you know, we needed to do this work, you did the right things, blah, 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 whatever. It makes so much sense that you would be reimbursed on with their formula. It's not going to do the whole project. I mean, they're not going to pay for everything, but at the same time, there's a formula that they have that should allow for the reimbursement and the upfronting of those funds from WSAFCA and us. So I'm a little perplexed. I mean, I just don't quite understand if maybe it's just money, and, they're looking for ways, they're talking about the fiscal cliff and all this other stuff that's going on over there now. And maybe they're looking at ways to do it. But say that. I mean, just tell us what the heck it is. To, just sort of have us hanging it out there and continuing to upfront the funds, and then the feds just run away. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
The rest of the program shares your confusion over the Army Corps of Engineers' behavior in response to our requests. It's been a long time. We've had a lot of communication with them. We've followed their direction time and time again.
Absolutely.
We've done what they told us to do. We've done so at the expense of our time and our effort and our money. And it has not been fruitful, and that is disappointing. So the tack that we're working on now with our lobbyists is to continue to engage the ASA, continue to encourage her to take, again, a different perspective in interpreting Section 221, which is the present crediting vehicle that she's chosen to use. But it's time to probably move into the legislative arena, and so that work is now winding up.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry I couldn't offer you a clear explanation, because frankly I'm confused by it as well.
Well, I truly know what we should do, so we'll go to work on that at a later time.
Dave, my 2 cents is that,
for it.
this is a policy decision made by a portion of the bureaucracy, for lack of a better term, and they can be reversed and changed. We weren't going to see any actual funds until the GRR was approved and the project was authorized anyhow. So I would say continue on the course you're at, and at some point, whether it's through this 2221 program or the original 104 program or whatever the number was, keep pushing.
You got it.
What is the total amount of the funds we're talking about?
Oh golly, off the top of my head, I'm sorry. It's in the order of.
65% of the two projects.
Yeah. You're looking it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 to $10 million for the 2 EIPs.
A lot of money.
That's a lot of money. It's money that the big value there is the leveraging in the cost share arrangement with the federal, state, and local cost share arrangement. It's the leveraging potential that is really at stake. So moving on to a couple other highlights, we've talked about the GRR, the General Reevaluation Report. This is another activity that is in some ways struggling to work itself through changing rules. The Corps of Engineers continues to work in figuring out what the planning modernization process means to this GRR, as well as the 250 other GRRs that still remain in the Corps' nationwide portfolio. We continue to work closely with Corps staff. In fact, met with them yesterday and provided an in-depth briefing on the Southport Early Implementation Project to help them understand the process by which WSAFCA has gone through to evaluate alternatives and progressively screen those alternatives down to an identified preferred project for 65% design. In some ways, way too much information for the feasibility level study that they're in the middle of, but it helps them understand our rationale, the approach of the agency in selecting a project, and provides them a lot of information that they wouldn't otherwise have to spend our money and the state's money in generating. So that's the level of interaction that we're having with staff at both the technical level and at an administrative level to keep the study on track. A milestone that we're waiting for and increasingly eager to see, however, is vertical confirmation, so district, division, and headquarter confirmation on a scope, schedule, and budget to complete the GRR. Right now, this preliminary schedule shows us achieving a the public draft combined GRR and environmental document in August next year, and completing a chief's report end of calendar year 2014. That first milestone is of crucial importance because we presently understand that that's the milestone that the ASA will recognize as the moment at which she can provide a letter of eligibility for credit, for Section 221 credit. And that has to line up with our schedule on the Southport project. It's pretty close. So again, looking ahead at this point, we're still in okay territory. But if that date continues to slip later, we approach the same kind of jeopardy in the circumstances we found ourselves in with the 2011 projects, where we went down the path with them, we followed their direction, we let a contract for construction because we wanted to hit a construction period, because the risk is there every wet year, and the state money isn't going to be there forever. We will need to proceed with the Southport project, and we want to make sure that the GRR milestone is in place in order for us to pursue crediting under the present rule set as we understand it. So that's a project of continuing attention at the highest level and a lot of energy in helping them move along. Yes, sir. Yes, we work very closely. The non-federal partners, so it's DWR and WSAFCA, work very closely together in maintaining a shoulder-to-shoulder position with respect to Corps of Engineers' work on the GRR. They are also concerned about the, call it, pace and progress of this GRR as well as others in the valley. The shining star is up valley at Sutter Butte, which is one of the Corps of Engineers' pilots for implementing the new planning methodology. But that level of attention hasn't necessarily been shared with other GRRs, such as the common features across the river. So the state is very concerned about the progress on GRR, the way that the Corps is handling it, the prospects for authorization once the GRR is done. So I don't have, they share our concerns, long story short. They're a close partner on this effort.
When the Army Corps of Engineers releases their report on the 26th of October for the setback levy, would we be sure and get that out to the stakeholders in that area?
I'm not sure I'm following you, Chairman.
Well, in the setback levy, the Corps is going to issue a press release.
Oh, I see.
About the delay and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
And I think we ought to communicate that to the people that live in that area, that use the South River Road in that area there.
Okay. I'm sorry, I wasn't tracking.
Possible.
The Corps did, in fact, do a press release and probably distributed, I think, this upward of 200 channels, different media channels throughout the region. The Corps also updated the completion date on the 4 construction signs that are at the edges of the project, so the neighborhood's well apprised. But you're suggesting that they send letters out to
I would
property owners?
suggest that we do. There's a lot of people that don't get that information.
I'll take a look at that.
I think what we got to do,
It's going to add up to quite a bit of money.
The people in Southport, especially, as informed as we are ourselves in what's happening. I think we just have to do that. We have a contract with our public affairs operation, that sort of thing, and I think maybe we ought to be utilizing them maybe a little bit more than what we are.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of questions that come up and that sort of thing. And I would hope that the staff would get together and talk with Victoria and Hannah about the farm that they have and see if we can't really talk to them and find out exactly what's going on here. They talk about a road that's going to separate their property. Well, that's a city problem, but I think it's something that we should be involved in, and as far as they're concerned, it's a concern that they have, and that sort of thing.
I will, I'll reach out to the Okuyamas, and I will reach out to the Okuyamas, and if they're amenable, we'll meet with them.
Good.
With respect to notification to the Southport community about the continuing closure at the Sac Bank project, I think that's what you were referring
Yes.
to. That so one approach certainly is a mail out to each property. It's fairly expensive to do that. Another approach, probably slightly less cost, would be to do a utility mailer insert. Would that work for you?
I don't care how you do it. It's just so that
Okay.
the information gets out. You know.
Okay. I think we'll pursue a utility bill insert, and we'll target it to that part of town.
I guess for me, the frustrating part of all of this, and that is the time that it takes to do it, to finish the GRR, the time that it takes to have the Corps and Secretary Darcy look at all of the different issues that they're looking at. It seems like it just takes so much time that it could potentially put us into another wet year. I mean, and that's what I'm concerned with. I mean, if I could build that damn thing now, I'd just go ahead and do it. But, you know, you really can't. I mean, there's a lot of planning and a lot of other things that need to go on. But we could really expedite all of that if we just had the funds and this governmental process, this bureaucracy wasn't so entrenched that we just, you know, it's one more year of potentially, and I don't have any idea, I don't have a crystal ball, but potentially of putting us in a very wet year. We don't know when it's going to happen. So, I mean, that's the frustrating part for me. And I know it is for the board. I mean, we all want to get this thing done and protect everybody tomorrow if we possibly can. I think we know the solutions. We may not have the exact plan, but I mean, I think we know a bit more about the under seepage. I think we know a bit more about a lot of different things to protect the community better. But at the same time, it just seems like it just takes so long to work through the bureaucracy. It just gets frustrating for us. And I know it does for you guys too. You know, you want to have all that. But one thing I will say, and that is, from a flood protection perspective, our community is better prepared and is safer than the last 25 years that I know of, that I've been on the city council. You know, we have done some good things, and it's not that we're tooting our own horn and everything, but sometimes the different things change. The system comes in and things change. I mean, we really never had a good idea 20 years ago about under seepage, and now we do. And so we know that when a storm happened in New Orleans called Katrina, there were some issues that happened there that the Corps and everybody looked at and said, you know, they could happen in other places too. So we got to get those things analyzed, fixed, and we will better protect those communities also. And so, but it's just the fact that it just, you know, the GRR is not going to be done until probably 2015, maybe 16, 14. Okay.
Yeah, let's not give them any ideas.
All right. Well, okay. But I mean, if still 2014 when we first heard the GRR is 2013. And then they came here and they said, oh, no, 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 we can't do that. It's going to be 2014. Well, you know, it's like, wait a minute, don't change this. Don't back it up. Move it forward. You know, they didn't hear us, but we tried.
It's our continuing message is
Okay. Well,
keep up the fast work.
okay.
Also, I'm glad to see that the request for qualifications for the Delta North Regional Management Plan, I'm glad to see that you guys are developing a method of communicating this to the community, because this is something that directly affects them also.
Absolutely. Actually, we can touch on that at this point. Excuse me. The request for qualifications that Chairman Denton refers to is a recruitment that we did as part of the regional flood management planning process. As I mentioned at the last couple board meetings, West Sacramento is part of the Lower Sacramento and Delta North regional flood management planning area. We expect to submit an application to DWR this afternoon or tomorrow, depending upon Chelsea's availability, for directed funding to complete the planning work over the next 14 months. The process of assembling this application has been extensive over the last several months, meeting with over 100 different entities on both sides of the Sacramento River in Sacramento County, Sutter County, Yolo, and Solano counties, to develop an approach, but also a governance structure. This is something that the state hasn't done before. The DWR attempted it and couldn't quite figure out how to do it when they prepared the 2012 Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. So now DWR essentially punted to the regions to figure out how to, from the bottom up, figure out a list of necessary improvements and non-structural changes, as well as priorities for the state to consider when making investments over the next 20, 30 years. The activities, again, have been very extensive, a lot of outreach, primarily focused on local maintaining agencies and agencies that are affected by flood risk reduction, but also including other stakeholders such as environmental, non-governmental organizations for environmental interests, landowner interests, and others who have a stake in the overall process. That early effort, outreach effort, and engagement effort concluded in late October with the first plenary session of the two coordinating committees. There are two coordinating committees, one on each side of the Sacramento River, that represent the authority under the regional planning process. These are all the voting authority is consolidated in local maintaining agencies and DWR maintenance areas. These are the agencies that are directly responsible for implementing and maintaining flood risk reduction improvements. But these coordinating committees are broad platforms for outreach and participation, so including, again, all the other stakeholder interests. That session was held on the 24th to essentially get the nod to proceed with the program that's been developed, including services for public outreach and stakeholder engagement. As a crucial fundamental cornerstone of the entire effort is to make the connections that need to be made, to have the conversations that need to be had about the kinds of issues that local maintaining agencies are facing throughout the region, tap into their knowledge about what works, what doesn't, and find out what are the types of projects and the priorities that'll help them get their jobs done, and then roll that up into essentially a regional report as input to DWR while it considers the next draft or the next update, the 2017 update for the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. It was a very successful meeting. We also had the first meeting of the administrative committee that provides a kind of a business bridge between both sides of the river, between these two coordinating committees. In addition to the outreach consultant, we also have retained, or will be retaining, and I'll be bringing those contracts to this board in December, a a group of consultants to help the flood management process understand all the other kinds of planning that's going on in the region related to water supply, water quality, environmental enhancement, agricultural activities. This was another blind spot in DWR's work in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. We all knew while we were working on the flood risk reduction content of the plan that there were several elephants in the other room, such as the BDCP or environmental restoration going on in the Yolo bypass, but they couldn't figure out how to make those connections and integrate and bring those other planning processes into the flood arena. That's a major component of this work over the next 12 months, is to make sure that we're informed about the other initiatives that are going on and looking for opportunities to develop multiple objective projects that yield benefits for all the different stakeholders in the region. So again, we're going to submit an application in the next couple days. DWR will be receiving applications from 7 other regions in the Central Valley. We expect that DWR will probably need a couple months to work through those applications. DWR had initially budgeted $5 million for the 9 regional planning efforts. A couple of them have consolidated, such as ours. But it's very likely that the proposals coming in from the field are going to amount to more like $8 to $10 million. Again, it's fully within the budget allocated for this type of purpose at the planning level, but it isn't what DWR had initially expected. So we're anticipating they're going to need some time to chew on it. We'll also be asking them to give us the early authorization to begin expending funds just to get started, because whether we start this year or next year, we still have to put the planning process together. We still have to begin making contacts. We still have to start gathering and doing research, gathering information and doing research one way or the other. And we'd like to start now. We'd like to start as soon as possible because it's going to be a busy year.
This isn't going to include our money, though.
No, the money that WSAFCA and SAFCA have fronted essentially get us into the game, get us to the point where DWR will begin reimbursing expenses.
I don't think we want to find ourselves in the same position we did with the Army Corps of Engineers, where we do spend our money and then they guarantee us so much they're going to pay us back and don't do it. So we don't want to get caught in that thing with this one.
No, we don't. So that's the update on the Central Valley Flood Management Planning Program. But one last thing I'd like to mention, though, is that I think emblematic of the level of support that's been achieved in the region, this application will be submitted with letters of support from the Yolo County Board of Supervisors, also the Yolo County Water Resources Association, and another letter with 20 different signatures from staff and executive level staff of local maintaining agencies and other local agencies within the active planning region. So it's been quite an achievement just to get this level of concurrence and buy-in, and we feel like it's the right start.
30 RD districts, reclamation districts.
Oh, yes.
Already signed up for this.
A bunch of them. And in fact, if the board, if you want to take a look at the geography that's affected by this, you take a look in the board packet, you'll see a map after the biweekly status report and give you just a quick image on the geographic scope and the number of entities that are engaged. And this is just a map of the reclamation districts. So what you don't see here are all the municipalities, the counties, environmental interests, landowner interests. It's going to be quite an enterprise. Touch on a few other, again, items before concluding. I'd like to mention that emergency preparation and flood season coordination is taking off. We'll be starting a flood season coordination meeting on November 14th, and followed by a couple flood fight training sessions by DWR. I believe it's going to be here in West Sacramento on November 27th and 28th. Another item just along the lines of public outreach and communications, utility customers throughout the city will be receiving a flyer in their utility bills reminding them that flood insurance is a good idea, and that for all of our efforts and definitely having the best flood protection that a small city could hope for and will continue to work for, the best we can do is reduce risk, not eliminate it. And so these utility inserts are encouraging people to consider flood insurance and providing some information about how to learn more about it. And that concludes my presentation. Just wanted to touch on some of the highlights. If there are some other questions that board members have about the update, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Informational items. Have any informational items?
I'm sorry. No, I don't have any additional information for the board.
Last night at the council session, our federal lobbyist, it was time for us to take a look and see, should we change what's really going on in that, because we've had Holland and Knight for a number of years. And we chose to stay with Holland and Knight. And so I guess one of the things that, since we have the same administration, but at the same time, there certainly will be some changes from an administrative perspective. I mean, people back in Washington, they've been on that job for 4 years, and so there'll be some changes. But I would like to make sure that we continue to lobby and use our lobbying firm and have the various WSAFCAs and SAFCAs input and look at lobbying back in Washington, D.C., but not wait for cap to cap or some of the other big things that we have going on. Because, quite frankly, it's too late. The appropriations bills are already in. All these other things are already happening. And so in January, maybe late December, January, well, late December won't work because they're not there, but in January and early February is when they start to put these appropriation bills in and they start to allocate some funds and they get down to, serious business. So I would like to make sure that we stay ahead of that curve, so to speak, and we get Mr. Panos or we get different folks talking with Holland and Knight and with these other lobbying firms that are back there from, we'll say, SAFCA across the river or the city of Sacramento or anybody that really has those kinds of folks to see if we can help with the 221 process, see if we can help with the 401 process, if it's not completely thrown away, and see if we can help with maybe moving up the GRR. There may be some things we could talk about to have that happen, but I'd like to make sure that we're proactive and we're active. And I know we have been in the past, but I just want to make sure that you guys hear that. I mean, I think, and I don't know, but I think that the January, February time is really the time to go back there, because that's when they're starting to get back to work and tackle some of the big problems.
Will do.
Okay, anything else? Meeting's adjourned.